Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Kathryn Mattie, CIO at Brightpoint. Kathryn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLynx comes in. We've partnered with the best cybersecurity companies in the world to be able to provide our clients with the best possible solution at the best possible price. So whether it's managed SIM, SOC, EDR, MDR, XDR, you name it, we'll be able to help you find the right solution at the right price. Find out more at cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Kathryn, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Brightpoint and your role there as CIO?
Yeah, happy to, Matt. So Brightpoint is an Illinois-based nonprofit. We serve 34,000 children and families per year across the state of Illinois, from urban areas like Chicago to rural areas in Southern Illinois. We offer programming across 4 areas: child welfare, mental health and wellness, parent and family support, and early childhood education.
Wow. 34,000? Jeez. Okay,
Yeah.
That's quite the operation. So, wow. So how do you do that? I mean, when it comes to the technical side, I mean, how many people do you have? Obviously, it's not just you helping 34,000 people. So you must have quite the crew. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're about 950 total employees at Brightpoint, primarily program staff. So, I mentioned those 4 categories. We run programs in lots of different areas. So things like foster care, we run early childhood centers. So we've got teachers on staff. In the mental health and wellness space, we've got therapists. As we think about child welfare, we do case management. So lots of people who inspire me every day with the really difficult and hard work that they do. And they bring their, passion and professionalism to their roles every day. And then our team is made up of, we're about 20 or so. And we've got our sort of IT infrastructure and help desk. We've got a data team and software team. And then I also oversee our quality improvement team as well.
Nice. Okay. So I'm always kind of fascinated. I mean, I get the commercial side, the whole business enterprise, the money in, money out, makes sense. But that's an impressive number of families that you're supporting every year in various ways. How does that even get financed? How do you support an operation like that financially?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have a blended funding model. We're primarily, most of our funding comes from either state or federal funding sources. So effectively what happens is we operate as a provider to people like the state of Illinois or the federal government to run programs and services that they know have a big impact. And so we contract with them and we provide a high level of service based on our size and scale and expertise. We're also a 140-year-old organization. So we've been doing this a long time and have the benefit of more than a century's worth of expertise in the kind of child welfare space. And so, I think our public sector providers look to us to provide really high quality services for very vulnerable populations. And then we also have some amazing private sector partners as well who support our work. From foundations, some on the tech side as well. AWS is a very generous sponsor of our work. And so we're lucky to have great partners kind of on the public sector side and on the private sector side as well.
That's fantastic. Well, it makes perfect sense. So, I really like how, I don't think we've ever had two CIOs or CISOs even, or I don't think we've ever had 2 people in tech who've had the same background, coming into tech. So I'm always curious to hear these stories. And I think it helps people coming into tech to hear your kind of origin story and how you got into tech, what inspired you, and kind of your path to the top. Because I do believe a lot of people are intimidated by tech and think that if they're not an Uber hacker by 16 breaking into the Pentagon, they probably aren't going to make it in tech. And nothing could be further from the truth. That's probably a great way to land in jail, but not a great way to land in tech. So can you tell us about, kind of your background and your origin story, if you will?
Yeah, happy. Yeah, don't hack the Pentagon. That's good, solid advice for everyone out there. Yeah, so my background, I've spent the last 15 years really at the intersection of social impact and technology. And I came into the technology part very accidentally. I was doing a public policy graduate degree. That's what my background is in, public policy. And in the year in between my first and second year in grad school, I did an internship at the city of Chicago at the mayor's office, which was supposed to be a public policy internship. But the mayor had just hired the city's first ever chief data officer, and he had lots of work to do and was looking for people to help. So I raised my hand. I think, you talked about that intimidation piece. I think that is just a huge, I credit, just me raising my hand in that one moment and not being intimidated to really kind of changing the trajectory of my whole career. And I ended up working for 3 years at the city of Chicago, eventually moving over to the technology and innovation department, and got to work on all sorts of very cool data and technology projects that help serve, the 3 million people in the city of Chicago, and, really got a taste of what you can do with technology to make the world a better place. And so from there, I worked a bit in the private sector. I've worked in philanthropy. I helped U Chicago scale a new program that was a combined program between public policy and computer science. So really thinking about how do you, train people at this exact intersection that I found and that I found to be extraordinarily impactful. And then for the last 5 months or so, I've been Brightpoint's first chief information officer.
Well, congratulations on that. That's fantastic. So now being the first Brightpoint CIO, kind of what does that entail, right? I mean, you've obviously got you've got a great team, you've got a lot on your plate. What's the day-to-day look like and what's the future for Brightpoint and technology look like?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned, the team. I had the benefit of coming into a really wonderful team that is, passionate and talented and driven. So that was, that's an exciting, thing to walk into, to have that. I also have the benefit of really an executive team who kind of gets it. I'm not having to do a lot of selling on things like AI or automation or investment. Like, they really understand how these tools can be used to grow and scale our impact and make every dollar count, our limited dollars that we have in the nonprofit space. And so, I feel lucky to kind of be in this situation. I think as the first CIO, we're defining the role as we go here. I think one of the things that there's a couple things that we're focused on in the kind of years to come. One is really thinking about our data strategy. So, we've got a rich set of data across all of these, 40 plus programs that we run across the state and participants that we serve. And how do we better leverage this data? How do we get it out of silos? All of those things that, are not unique necessarily to the nonprofit sector. I feel like I've been working on getting data out of silos for 15 years. And so really thinking about how do we get more insights and value out of this really rich asset of data that we have. We're also excited about tech enablement in general. And so things like automation, what can we do for our caseworkers to get them out of, typing up notes and case notes and more time actually helping people and with people, teachers more time in the classroom and less time entering data. So things like that will have a big ROI. The other thing that's exciting and everyone is talking about obviously is AI. And so, we're really thinking about what can we do that's innovative in the AI space and impactful. And then also we're doing some really interesting work around referrals. And so, if you think about, most people have experienced in some way, shape, or form, how disconnected our social service and healthcare and things like that are, and how hard it is to get from one service to another. That is compounded for the families that we serve who are facing things like food insecurity, poverty, housing insecurity. And so we're going to spend the next couple of years really thinking about how do we invest in technology that can make that easier for families to quickly kind of get access to the services that they need. So very excited about that set of work as well.
Those are, I mean, all of those that you mentioned, whether it's the data silos, the AI, the kind of the using technology to kind of refer and kind of get them more access to more services, all awesome. How does that actually, what does that actually look like? I mean, I think we all get the data silos. I think everybody fights that fight, right? It's the good fight that we've all been fighting for forever. And I think we all get that. But like, when it comes to, even the data automation, right? You mentioned that, and I missed that. So, what's that? What is out there to help? That caseworker putting in, I think, is that the right word? Okay. The caseworker who's putting in notes and stuff. What kind of solutions are you looking at to help kind of speed that along so they can spend more time with the I don't know, person?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think, we're looking at a lot of sort of voice to text solutions right now, which have gotten a lot better in the last few years. Summarization with Gen AI has gotten a lot better in the last few years as well. So, I think things that we're considering are, the cyber side of that. We want to make sure that as we're introducing new tools into the ecosystem, that we're really thinking about continuing to keep our data contained. And so that's a big consideration of how can we use these tools in a way that's secure and compliant, and we have the consent of the people that we're working with to use them. And then I think we're also really trying to think about just in general, what are good use cases and not good use cases for these types of technology, because it's not the solution to everything. And so really just working in kind of close partnership with our program teams on this. I think one of my lessons learned the hard way is, really thinking upfront before you get started on some of these things around kind of three key components. What is the value? How can we make it work? And how can we get it done? And so if you don't have those kind of three pieces of the puzzle really solidly in place, you're not going to have a kind of successful project.
Oh, I like it. I mean, that is efficient. It's right there. Yep. I love it. So, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, there are some really cool, voice automation and AI summary, things like Plot and, but you're right. You do have to be very careful, especially now when you're talking about, you've got private health information, PII, you've got all this information that needs to be, safeguarded and protected, and it can't go out there on somebody's, whatever it is, their AI platform that ends up being used everywhere, and everybody's got access to that accidentally. So yeah, couldn't agree more. So is there, I'm kind of interested to see kind of where that goes for you guys in terms of AI. I mean, it's super interesting. And I think everybody's kind of curious where their organization goes with AI. I know it's very early days. There's a million, billion, trillion different options out there, and it's just fascinating. And so one of the, I think recently we had the CIO of ATL, right, the airport, on talking about what they're doing with it, and how they're going to be, they're going to be the first airport to where it's going to you're going to register with your face, and you won't actually have to use a boarding pass. You'll just be able to walk right through, boom, boom, boom.
Wow.
Just walk right on the plane, boom. Super cool. And when you start thinking about the numbers, for how many people pass through there every day, it's a staggering number. And so if they can speed up that process ever so slightly, Now, I don't
Mhm.
know how you board people onto a plane faster.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother issue,
Yeah.
right? but it's a really interesting use of technology
Yeah.
to kind of smooth things along and speed it up, make
Mhm.
the experience easier for people, which I think is what you're similar to what you're getting with where that caseworker being able to
Yep.
spend more time face to face versus their face in the computer typing in the notes. So
Exactly. Yeah. One other, now you've got me started on AI. I think,
do it.
we're also prototyping another really exciting AI use case right now. So I don't know if there are, any parents. I'm sure there are some parents listening out there. But I think every parent has experienced just the, mental load and stress of parenting and how difficult it can be to navigate. And so one of the things that we're prototyping now in partnership with AWS, we were awarded their Children's Health Innovation Award. And so we're building a chatbot for parents. And the idea is that this is a chatbot that has the benefit of all of our knowledge about referrals that's built in as sort of a subject matter expert. And parents can go in and 24/7 in any language that they want ask the chatbot about, where's the nearest food pantry that's closest to me? Or how can I get connected to a therapist? Or I'm getting evicted. Who can help me with legal services? And so really thinking about, I think this is a really exciting one. I think too, when I think about AI and, the automation piece is exciting. Like you said, when you start to think about like the time savings and quantifying that. But I think sort of the access to information and kind of how do you democratize things that are in people's heads and that expertise that can be so valuable to someone who, in that moment is in a crisis, and get them connected to something that can, make a huge difference in their lives. So we're early. We're about, 6 or 7 weeks into building this thing. But I'm excited about kind of where it can go, not only just as a parent myself, but just thinking about, what this could do for someone, and just this like small intervention that can really kind of help not have something not become a full-blown crisis.
Oh, absolutely. Because as you're saying that, I'm thinking it's interesting because I've found that I'm almost annoyed with Google now. The Google search. It's like,
Yes,
oh, yeah,
yes.
I've got to go through the pages and find the
Yeah,
answer. Oh, please.
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Between ChatGPT and Grok, it's like it's just all this information. Like, yeah, you ask it a
I
question, boom,
know.
here's the answer from
Here
20
you
different
go.
sources that I collated and
Yes,
got you the answer. So I love
exactly.
this idea for you guys, to be able to, and I would imagine that the form factor is probably going to be in some sort of app where somebody can
Hmm.
have it on their phone
Yep, you
and they
got it.
might not use even the right phrase. That's why I love this AI. Like they might not know
Exactly.
what to say. They're like, the landlord is telling me I've got to get out, like whatever. And they might not even know that it's
Right,
eviction or whatever it is.
right.
And then to be able to get assistance and be like, hey, look,
Yes.
here's who you call, and
Yeah.
we'll, a professional will be able to help you out with this. Or, my kid's not feeling, I don't know what it is. My kid's not feeling
Yeah.
well or whatever it is.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
even, can you even go further and be like, have it things like helping juggle household things, like, like schedule and like, I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's
Yeah.
AI, right?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Can't you be
The
like,
foundational models can already do that.
right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So that's pretty slick.
Yes, I know. We're thinking about that type of thing. We're also thinking about workflow too. Like how could we have it some of the more like agent type functionality where we know if, we know that you asked for a referral for this. Could it follow up with you and say like, "Hey, they're open. Did you get access to that? If you didn't, here's a reminder, here's their phone number. They're open now. You can give them a call." That type of thing where it can really kind of like play that role of a coach and a mentor almost.
Well, talking about speaking of silos, I mean, it would be interesting to see how that could tie into your system, or even
Yep.
when they say that, be like, hey, would you like me to set up an appointment, or
Yes,
let me
that's
have somebody reach out to you,
exactly.
and then boom, they get an email
And
saying, hey, call Jane at this number. She needs help with this. Cool.
exactly. That's where we're going.
Click.
We'll get there. We'll get
Love
there
it.
eventually.
That's super awesome. I can't help but think. I just saw Sam Altman was talking about how the people being polite to chat GPT is costing millions.
Costing like
And so
tons of,
please
yeah,
stop. Right.
compute. Yeah.
So hysterical, but we don't want to get in trouble when the AI takes over. I want to be on the good
Yeah.
side. I'm gonna still
Right.
continue to be polite.
Smart.
Thank you, Siri. Um, so I think I can't help but wonder what the cost is going to be. For implementing something like that. If you've got
Yeah.
this kind of Chat GPT, Grok like powered AI assistant that people are leaning on to say, hey, what's that look like cost wise to Brightpoint, as they start rolling that out? Is it?
Yeah. That's a good question. So, as an aside, very quickly on the please and thank you
Yeah.
to AI, I
Uh-huh.
also read a study, and I don't know if this has been since debunked, that the AI models will actually do better if you're nice to them. Like if you say, please, like this is really important to me and my job, I have a lot, riding on the advice that you give me. Someone did a study that showed that it like actually gave you a better
It
output.
tries
So
harder. It's like,
so it tries harder.
yeah.
So maybe there's some rationality, even though apparently there's a big cost to it. I saw that as well.
Well, I
Um,
can I can believe it because have you tried Grok and seen its thinking? This is
no,
crazy. It's so wild. So you go to like grok.com and
yeah,
it's basically like chat GPT, right? Same sort of thing, except you get to see its thinking. And when you're like, and it's like, oh, you wanted this, and it starts going down that path. Oh, but it starts going off on a tangent. Oh, but you wanted this. So let me focus on this. And oh, this was really important to you. And so you can see it say stuff like that in its rationale when it's going
yeah,
through. And so 100%, I believe that when you're like, this is really important, it's for my job and blah, then it's
yeah,
like, oh, well, this is really important to you. I
yeah.
should really try harder. And
It's
so,
an input. It's another
yep,
input for it. Yeah, I do know what you're talking about. This is like the deep research functionality that they're building in where
yes,
you can see it running. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, no,
It,
that's
it-
super interesting. We've been playing around with that a bit for some research here as well. But yeah, but anyway, to your point
yeah,
on sort of the cost and thinking about, how do you make this sustainable? I think, we're early days still for figuring that out. I think right now we have some ideas about thinking, kind of on the social entrepreneurship side of things, which is also a bit of my background, as we're thinking about this tool that's incredibly valuable, not only to parents and participants, it's also valuable to a lot of the other nonprofit organizations that you're referring to. And so maybe potentially one day there's like a licensing opportunity there. We could build it in a way. We're trying to build it from the beginning in a way that's sort of multi-tenant, where we can think about could we license it or something like that. So we're
mm,
very far away from that. But I think, as we think about limited dollars for technology investment, and, I'm a big believer in, the things that nonprofits and public sector organizations do are really creating real value, like economic value in the world. And so whenever there's an opportunity for us to kind of capture some of that value and reinvest, we're always looking for those types of things.
I love that. So did I hear you right? This was all based off of like you won an AWS award, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So does that mean that they're helping to build it and kind of fund it
Yeah.
and develop it so you don't have to invest those dollars because they're like, this is a great idea, it's a great cause, and so they're pitching in and rolling up their sleeves and
That's
helping.
exactly right.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And that's a great team. Yeah. That's a great team over there as well.
It really is. We know some great people at AWS, and it's a fantastic organization. They're doing great work,
Yep.
both, yeah, just all the way around. I mean, I love how
Mhm.
they operate. It's, yeah, good
Yeah.
people. Yep.
Yes.
Ah,
Agreed.
that's awesome. Oh, that's very exciting. So what kind of time, what are they thinking, in terms of like the build out? How long does something like this take? I know it's early days. You're just getting going, but
Yep.
is it like, is it kind of open ended? They're like, well, as long as it takes, if it's going to be 6 months, it's going to be 6 years, whatever it takes, we're going to do this. No, I didn't think so. Like, yeah, that would not be nice. No. All
Not
right.
so
What are the
much.
constraints? Not so much.
Yeah, so we're targeting sometime this summer to start piloting an initial prototype of this with our doula program. So we've got an incredible program of doula services, are shown to have a huge return on investment when you can work with moms in sort of the prenatal stage and early child, like very newborn stage, and help them kind of get off on a good, healthy, solid foot. And so we've got an amazing program in that space, and we're working with the program leadership on that team to think about how could we, start with that program over the summer, hopefully get this tool in front of their participants that they work with and start to see kind of how does it look, how is it being used, where are the gaps, where can we get better, and then sort of iterate from there with the goal of eventually having this be available to all 34,000 folks that we serve every year.
That's really cool. I mean, I could even see it tying in kind of more on the front end where you say, hey, look, this is your direct interface with Brightpoint. When you say, hey, I want to blah blah blah, and boom, then it goes and sets up that appointment. So it could really channel, kind of funnel everybody in through that app to make it really user friendly and easy. Be like, hey, I need this, and oh, direct access to all your services. Here you go, boom.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. I know. Well, now, okay, one other thing that we're thinking about with this too is, thinking about referrals, and like we can do a lot. Obviously, we've got tons of programs in a lot of different spaces, but we don't offer every type of service that the families that we work with might need. And so there's a lot that, there's thousands of organizations just in Illinois that we could potentially refer in and out to. And so the other thing that we're thinking about too down the line is, could we use this to sort of crowdsource quality information as well? So like have I got a referral from this place. Hey, how did it go? Like, was it a good experience? Was it a bad experience? And then over time, you integrate that feedback and your list just becomes better and better and better in a sort of dynamic way. Thinking, as lots of websites do this type of thing, like the customer rating that people use. So could we incorporate something like that as well? So there's a lot of, like, you thought of a lot of great ideas of directions we could take it. We've got a lot of ideas too.
That's so cool. Oh, that's really exciting. And it's cool to see that happening kind of on the nonprofit side, which I don't think you typically don't associate nonprofit and innovation just because of the financial constraints. It's like, you're doing good work. We don't expect you to also be, cutting edge with anything really, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
good for you.
I think having worked in, the public sector, the nonprofit sector, and the private sector, I do think that this is certainly not, ubiquitously true, but I do think that what you said is a perception that's very much out there. But, I think people in the public sector and nonprofit sector are so used to like having to make it work with so little that it actually drives like a real kind of culture of innovation. I think the public sector is a lot more constrained. Obviously, they have to be super risk averse and compliant in a lot of ways that are restricting. But part of the reason why I was excited to kind of come into the nonprofit sector too is because you still get that sort of impact side of things. But you can take a little, you can make some investments in something like this. And, the public sector, when they fail, it's on the front page of the newspaper. And so, but we have a little more leeway to, be innovative and try new things and try to move things forward.
I love that. Well, I can't help but think when you talk about your past and what you're doing there and all of these kind of connections with public, private, you've been around, and I kind of think that it's I'd like your take on how important networking is to your your success. Is it something, because I think a lot of times in tech, people tend to be very technology focused and not nearly enough people focused. And I think it's one of those things that's kind of hindering younger people as they lean more towards technology and away from people. And I kind of want to get your take on what your experience has been. And was that, an important, kind of factor in your success? Or was it just that, well, you're just freaking awesome at what you do, and that it didn't matter? Okay.
Definitely not the latter. I would attribute 100% of my success to being good on the sort of people side and process side of things rather than the technology side of things. I think there's a stat out there, I think BCG, that 70% of technology projects fail. And it's almost never because the technology doesn't work. It's almost always because we don't have the right people, or we don't have the right buy-in, and we don't have the right process. And so, I think if you can just bat a little bit better, have a bit of a better batting average than that, pretty terrible 70% failure rate, I think that goes a long way. I will tell you, so fun fact, on the kind of networking side. When 15 years ago, I was an intern at Brightpoint, where I am now, and so I started off 15 years ago. I did an academic internship at the organization on one of the program teams, and I just kept in touch with the team here over the years. And one of the people that I worked for is now the CEO of Brightpoint, and he's an incredibly visionary person in the child welfare space. And so,
Yeah.
when I started looking for something new, he was one of the first people that I reached out to just to kind of bounce ideas around with. And so, it's been a lot of fun to come back into this organization from intern to CIO 15 years later. So I think that is a story that hopefully kind of demonstrates the power of just, keeping in touch, and even just for the benefit of, there's always something to learn from anybody, and you never know what can come of it. And if nothing comes of it, that's fine too.
I absolutely love that. And I think that is just such a great example. And I think one of the things that young people will struggle with, or people who maybe are more, tech oriented, and maybe the introverts, maybe they're more challenged with the idea. So what advice would you give somebody to, how do you tactically do that, right? What are the, I know a lot of people, especially in tech, and are very much like, I need a process.
Mhm.
What does that process of staying in touch look like? Do
Yeah.
they, right? And I know that, I know that's challenging for a lot of people, especially younger people who aren't used to it, and they've got this, they're trying to figure it out. I think, older people, they've kind of figured out their rhythm, but I think there's always room to learn, to improve when it comes to people skills and networking. They're just so undervalued and so important. So what's your recommendation? I mean, clearly
Yeah.
it worked for you. What's that staying in touch? What are the tactics there that you employ?
Yeah. So I think the simplest way that I can say it is put yourself in situations where you're uncomfortable. And so, whether that means going to like a local tech meetup in person, instead of just, like contributing on a board or Slack channel or something like that, like where can I go see somebody face to face and be in communication? Networking events are, just cringe, I think is the word that young people use. But
I believe they do.
I think, it's everybody is uncomfortable. And so just knowing that it's not just you, and like you're going to say something stupid at some point, and that's okay. And you'll learn. And I think as you go, every year it gets a little bit easier and easier to be comfortable in your discomfort. And I think I would just keep going. And I think that's probably my biggest advice.
I love it. And so, well, let's take the very specific example of staying in touch with the past
Yeah.
employers, past
Mhm.
everything. How do you do that? What
Yeah,
what's
so
your
I think the biggest thing is, and I think a lot of young people make this mistake, which is always thinking about kind of relationships as like what's in it for me. And so I think the biggest advice that I would have, in ways that I've tried to stay in touch with people, is really trying to understand like what are their goals, what are they trying to do, how can I contribute to their success, and really thinking about it more as giving rather than like what's in this for me. And I think, it usually works out where, if, when you're helping people, they want to help you as well. But I think not kind of coming at it from that angle and not expecting anything ever in return. I think another reason that I think young people kind of fall into that trap is that they don't think that they have anything that they can give. And you absolutely do. Even if it's just a fresh perspective on something, or a new idea, or just someone to talk to or bounce ideas off of, or someone in your network that you might have that you can connect them with. So I just wouldn't be afraid to be uncomfortable, to make that outreach, and really from this perspective of what can I give rather than what's in it for me.
And when it comes to staying in touch online, are you
Mhm.
big LinkedIn, Facebook kind of, that's a great way to stay connected? Or are you more like that? No, email, or try to meet people in person wherever possible. What's your recommendation to people?
Yeah. So I think LinkedIn is a great way to stay informed on what's going on with your network, also sort of industry trends. A lot of people that I follow are, really great about sort of posting, articles that are fascinating, or highlighting projects or initiatives or collaborations that are happening. And so I think using LinkedIn, follow the people that you're interested in, follow the companies that you're interested in, look at who they follow and follow them too. And that's just a great way to sort of build out a feed that can help you kind of stay informed and in the know. And then as far, I think relationships are built, one-on-one. In person's always better. But I think a virtual kind of coffee talk is great too. And again, coming from the perspective of listening and learning, and, there's something that you can learn from anyone.
I couldn't agree more. And as you mentioned, with the young people thinking they have nothing to give to anybody because they're just whatever, they're just out of college, or they're in college. It's like, really just look at the person who's one step behind you, right? The
Yes.
person who's just starting that class that
Yes.
you took last semester. You've got lots to give to somebody. So there's always
Absolutely.
somebody, and that, somebody who may be further ahead of you, if you will, in their
Mhm.
maybe never took that class, maybe never got that.
Yeah.
You never know. So there's always
Absolutely.
something that, yeah,
Absolutely.
totally agree.
Yeah. I probably annoy people with sending articles too. I'm a big article sender. Like if I see something that I think someone would be interested in, I try to take a few minutes and, hey, I don't know if you saw this, like thought you might find this interesting, that type of thing.
That is a really good one. It's I read this book and we almost had her on the podcast. I think it's called Super Connector, and she talks about that very thing. And it's but she had already retired and wasn't trying to do any more podcasts and stuff. But
Yeah.
it's a really interesting idea that this gal she was like an elementary school teacher, and then she became this like Silicon Valley super connector, and she is just loaded because all she did was it was a lot of that, a lot of sending these articles. When you meet somebody and you're like, oh, I saw this in the paper, and she would mail them the article, and they're just like keeping in touch, and builds out this massive network of people and all these. And then people are like, hey, do you know somebody like, and then you're connecting people, and before you know it, you're in all these deals, and you're being invited into to invest in
Yeah.
Facebook early on, and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And it's just like, you just never know
A
where
little goes a
where
long
can
way. Yep. Hmm.
absolutely. And it's always, as you said, from this perspective of giving, like, hey, I thought of this, I thought you might find this interesting. Uh,
That's it.
that's it, that's it.
2 minutes.
You
Yeah.
just never know. And then
Yep.
it's just nice. It's always good
Yeah.
to give. So
Yeah. Agreed.
totally love it. Well, Kathryn, this has been absolutely a blast. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about Brightpoint?
Yeah. So I'd love for you to check out our website, brightpoint.org. There's all sorts of information there about our incredible programs and impact, ways that you can donate. Any small amount, speaking of small gifts, will go a very long way to kind of help keep us sustainable and make the world a better place. I am active on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Kathryn Mattie, and I'm very happy to connect with anyone who's interested in learning more about the organization or just wants to chat about anything social impact and technology related. Thanks for having me.
I love it. Thanks for coming on. And until next time.
Okay, have a good one.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.